Fatal, we felt pretty good about.
Yeah.
You know, we felt. Well, I would do. It was just the core of the story.
Remember when one movie scared an entire generation out of cheating? Back in 1987, Fatal Attraction exploded into theaters and turned date night into psychological warfare. Michael Douglas as Dan Gallagher, the successful married lawyer who couldn't survive one weekend without making the worst decision of his life. Glenn Close was Alex Forrest, the woman on the other end of that decision, and the reason that every husband in America suddenly stopped flirting at office parties. Ann Archer as Beth Gallagher, the betrayed wife who eventually picks up a revolver and restores order to suburbia. Directed by Adrian Lyne, the story follows a harmless little weekend fling that then spirals into one of the most terrifying emotional meltdowns ever put on screen. And today we're going to count down 15 weird facts about Fatal Attraction that you probably have never heard before. And stick around for number one, because the screenwriter pulled huge chunks of the story straight from his own real life. And once you hear which parts, the movie, it hits a whole lot differently. But before we jump in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype this video up. It helps YouTube show this to more retro movie lovers just like you. Alright, the only thing your wandering eyes should be focused on is this countdown. Let's get into it. Number 15. The original ending was so dark that Paramount reshot the whole thing. Now here's the twist that flips everything that you thought you knew about Fatal Attraction. Alex Forrest was never supposed to rise out of that bathtub like the world's angriest sea creature. The first version ended as a tragic psychological drama, and it was bleak. After Dan nearly chokes Alex during their final confrontation, he leaves thinking the worst is finally over. But it wasn't. Alex slits her own throat with a kitchen knife covered in Dan's fingerprints. Then comes the real gut punch. Dan gets arrested for murder. He only walks free after Beth finds a cassette tape that Alex had mailed him. The one where Alex flat out threatens to kill herself. That tape saves him, but barely. Test audiences, they hated it. And Paramount screened the original cut, and the room got bloodthirsty. They didn't see Alex as tragic. They saw her as winning. And 1987 was not about to let Glenn Close outplay Michael Douglas from beyond the grave. So Paramount panicked and spent between $1.3 and $1.5 million reshooting the climax. Out went the opera suicide, and in came the bathroom attack, the bathtub jump scare, and Beth shooting Alex dead like the movie had wandered onto a different VHS shelf. Glenn Close hated it. She fought hard against turning Alex into a one-dimensional monster. Adrian Lyne wasn't thrilled either, but Paramount handed him a significant bonus, and his resistance melted right off. The original ending was fully shot. Footage has since surfaced in documentaries, and watching it feels like peeking into an alternate universe where Fatal Attraction stayed a tragedy instead of becoming a suburban slasher. Number 14. Around 20 directors slammed the door on this script. And there's nothing more satisfying than watching Hollywood fumble a generational hit when it's sitting right on their desk. Before Fatal Attraction blew up into one of the defining movies of the 80s, the script was getting passed around like a cursed artifact. More than 20 directors took a look and walked. 20! At the time, the script was still called Diversion. The story had everyone heading for the exits. Adultery, stalking, total emotional collapse, family destruction, and enough sexual paranoia to send late 80s suburbia into a full-blown nervous breakdown. Director after director called the material too disturbing, too sexual, too morally tangled, or just plain unfilmable. One of the biggest names to bail was John Carpenter, and that's one alternate universe timeline that we genuinely need to see. The guy behind Halloween and The Thing also waved it off, saying that the premise felt too close to Play Misty for me, Clint Eastwood's 1971 thriller about an obsessive stalker. And he had a point. The DNA, it's right there. Brian De Palma actually got further than anyone. He originally did say yes. Paramount greenlit the entire project on his name alone. But then De Palma decided that he didn't want Michael Douglas as the lead and basically gave Lansing an ultimatum. Him or Douglas? Lansing picked Douglas, and De Palma walked. The movie, back to being homeless. Then Adrian Lyne picked it up and clocked what everyone else missed. The second audiences saw it, game over. Box office monster. Oscar nominations. Terrified husbands coast to coast. 20-plus directors had to sit and watch the winning lottery ticket that they tossed in the trash hit the jackpot. And that one had to leave a mark. Number 13. The studio thought that Glenn Close wasn't sexy enough. Picturing anyone but Glenn Close as Alex Forrest feels illegal at this point, and yet the studio originally wanted nothing to do with her. Hollywood took one look at Glenn Close in the mid-80s and basically asked, yeah, sure, she's great, but can she dismantle a man's life seductively enough?
Is it true, Glenn, that you were not first choice for this role?
I think it was true, yeah, because I really had to fight to get this role.
At the time, Close was known for playing intelligent, grounded, dignified women in things like The World According to Garp and The Big Chill. Not the obvious pick for a character about to weaponize emotional instability like a guided missile. Director Adrian Lyne and producers Sherry Lansing and Stanley Jaffe all wanted somebody sultrier, more overtly dangerous. Lansing and Jaffe were so sure that Close was wrong that they reportedly didn't even want to be in the room during her audition. Lyne at least showed up. Michael Douglas later joked that they were doing her agent a favor just by letting her read. Ouch. Close ignored all of it. She understood what they didn't. That Alex wasn't supposed to be a fantasy. She was supposed to be a person. Broken, lonely, volatile, terrifying precisely because she felt human. So Close arrived ready for war. Hair was left deliberately wild, slimming black dress that she later said made her feel fabulous, plus a Valium to soften the nerves. Honestly, pretty perfect prep for this particular movie. Then her chemistry read with Douglas hit. Lyne described watching an extraordinarily erotic transformation unfold in front of him. That tragic, bewildered blend of sexuality, rage, and chaos, all clicking into place in real time. The exact thing that the studio swore she couldn't pull off. That was it. She didn't just win the role, she rewrote it, and the performance pulled in an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. Number 12, Glenn Close took Alex Forrest to actual psychiatrists. To Glenn, Alex was never supposed to be some cartoon psycho lurking in the stairwells. She wanted Alex to land as a real person, fragile, deeply disturbed, but still human underneath all the chaos. So Close walked the script over to 2 psychiatrists. One of them was her own.
Kind of generic psychopath. At this, it was a chance to show a truly tragic character in the context of this kind of film.
Now that's a level of commitment that most actors don't even pretend to fake. She had one specific question on the table. Could a person actually behave like this in real life? Or had the screenwriter wandered straight into soap opera lunatic territory? Both psychiatrists told her this kind of thing actually does happen. Neither psychiatrist gave Alex an official diagnosis. They traced everything she does in the movie back to one root cause: severe childhood trauma. And that was the entire explanation. Close later told CBS News, "I talked to 2 psychiatrists. Never did a mental disorder come up. Every clinical label hanging on Alex today, Declarambot syndrome, borderline personality disorder, the whole forensic psychiatry case study treatment, it all got bolted on after the fact." Glenn spent weeks trying to make Alex Forrest a human being. Pop culture turned her into a punchline. Welcome to the late 80s. Number 11. Every phone ring was designed to wreck your nerves. Younger viewers watching Fatal Attraction today might miss something crucial. Back in '87, a ringing phone could absolutely wreck your life. No caller ID, no blocking numbers. If someone wanted access to you, they had it. And Fatal Attraction weaponized that fear like nobody else. The film's sneakiest move? Turning a landline into psychological warfare. Alex Forrest's escalating calls drive almost the entire second half. It starts almost normal, a little awkward, a little clingy. Alex calls Dan's office, his apartment. She leaves messages, tries to reconnect, and then the tone sharpens. More frantic, more desperate, and Dan slowly realizes that Alex has forced her way into every corner of his existence. Work, marriage, home, family. It's the world's worst long-distance plan. The phone gives the movie some of its most legendary moments. Alex's all-time detonation, "I'm not going to be ignored, Dan," that boils the entire phone harassment arc down into one terrifying sentence. Then there's a moment where she calls a directory operator hunting Dan's unlisted number, gets shut down, and then snaps, "Well, F you!" Somewhere out there, a real 1980s operator went home that night and reevaluated every career choice she'd ever made. The call keeps climbing until Dan finally calls Alex back, and Beth grabs the receiver mid-conversation. That's when the tension truly detonates. Alex isn't just haunting Dan anymore. She's hearing the wife's voice on the other end. The safe zone? Gone. Number 10. That rabbit on the stove was 100% real, and it renamed a whole category of people. Now, one scene traumatized a generation of pet owners, and anyone who's ever glanced sideways at a simmering stock pot, you already know which one. Now, here's a detail that nobody warns you about going in. That was a real dead rabbit. Director Adrian Lyne and producer Sherry Lansing decided that if audiences were going to lose their minds over the scene, it had to read 100% real. So somebody on the crew strolled into a local butcher, bought an actual dead rabbit, and then carried it back to set like it was a routine grocery run. Now, to be clear, the rabbit wasn't killed for the movie. It was already dead when production picked it up. It's a small comfort, but the vibe on set still wasn't exactly Disney. Lyne tried the less horrifying route first. The crew rigged up a hollowed-out rabbit skin, but it read wrong on camera because it didn't have the right heft lifting out of the water. So they committed to full realism, which immediately created a new problem: the smell. To get the weight right, the rabbit had to be boiled with all the innards still inside. Lyne later described the result as a stench beyond belief. Now, look, at that point, the cast didn't even need acting notes. They just needed industrial ventilation. That stench handed Anne Archer the easiest performance of her career. When Beth lifts the pot lid and her face crumbles into pure horror, that's not technique. That's a woman reacting to an actual boiling rabbit corpse. And the scene, it didn't just scar a generation, it permanently rewrote the dictionary. Bunny boiler never gets said in the movie. Audiences coined it themselves, trying to describe what they had just watched. The phrase eventually made it into the Oxford English Dictionary, which has to be the strangest legacy that any boiled livestock has ever pulled off. Number 9, the family dog quietly stole the movie. Everyone remembers the rabbit, but almost nobody remembers Quincy. Quincy was the Gallagher family dog, a yellow lab who spent most of the movie wandering about the apartment, getting walked by Dan, and providing the only emotional support that the household had access to. While the humans were busy ruining each other's lives, Quincy was just out here vibing, doing dog stuff, completely unaware that his species was about to be aggressively upstaged by a rabbit in a stock pot. Now, here's the part that nobody talks about. Adrian Lyne loved that dog so much that he eventually bought one of Quincy's puppies and took her home to California. Out of an entire production filled with Oscar nominees, screaming matches over the ending, a real boiled rabbit, and Glenn Close getting concussed in a bathtub, the director's biggest takeaway was apparently the Labrador. The real Quincy lived out a quiet retirement in rural New Jersey and died of natural causes in 1996, at 15 and a half years old. The most stable character in Fatal Attraction was a dog who had no idea what was happening, and somehow he's the only one who got out clean. Honestly, relatable. Number 8, Glenn Close got a concussion and then found out she was pregnant. That bathroom finale wasn't just emotionally brutal, it was physically brutal too. The reshot ending wasn't faked with stunt doubles and clever angles. Glenn Close took the hits herself. During one take, her head got slammed into a mirror hard enough to give her a concussion, and she had to go straight to the hospital. Makes sense when you watch the scene. The reshoots were grueling on their own. Wrestling, fighting, getting thrown around the bathroom, and the bathtub dunking, which happened more than 50 times. 50! At some point, you're not filming a thriller, you're running like a Navy SEAL training with better lighting. And then the story takes a sharp left turn. When Close was being treated at the hospital, routine tests revealed that she was pregnant. One of the most violent scenes in late 80s cinema permanently linked itself to one of the biggest moments in her personal life. She found out that she was carrying her daughter, Annie Stark, while recovering from getting her head smashed for the cameras. And she kept filming the bathroom warfare after the concussion and pregnancy news, finishing out the reshoot already carrying her daughter. She since said that the climax makes her uncomfortable to watch because she realizes how much risk she unknowingly put her unborn daughter through. There's a strange coda to the whole thing. A few months later, Close presented at the 1988 Oscars alongside Michael Douglas, 8 months pregnant. The audience burst out laughing the moment she walked out. They'd remembered Alex's pregnancy from the movie. Close later called it Alex's triumph. One concussion and a hospital trip later, and she'd accidentally given her character the happy ending that Paramount spent $1.3 million erasing. Hey, quick break. Before we go deeper into this beautiful nightmare of adultery, hit that like button and subscribe. And drop us a comment. Which scene traumatized you the most? We want to know. Now, let's get back to the love triangle. Number 7, Madama Butterfly has never sounded the same since. One of the weirdest cultural side effects of Fatal Attraction is that it permanently rewired how a lot of people hear classical music. Before 1987, Puccini's Madama Butterfly was the gold standard for tragic, unrequited love, one of the most performed operas on the planet. But after Fatal Attraction, a whole generation couldn't hear Un bel dì without instantly picturing Glenn Close alone in the dark, clicking a lamp on and off like she was signaling the underworld. Madama Butterfly tells the story of Chow Chow San, a woman abandoned by an American naval officer who eventually kills herself with a knife. By locking Alex Forrest into that music, the film basically casts her as a woman acting out her own tragic prophecy in real time. The opera shows up everywhere: Alex's apartment, her invitation to Dan, and the lamp scene. The connection got even louder in the scrapped original ending. Alex's suicide was timed to Madama's Butterfly playing in full, with the knife mirroring Chow Chow San's death almost beat for beat. Subtle was not on the menu. The pairing stuck so hard that classical compilation albums still openly market Un bel dì, I'm not singing it again, recordings as from Fatal Attraction. That's how thoroughly one thriller hijacked a 1904 Italian opera's reputation. Puccini wrote a masterpiece, but the movie wrote a warning label. Number 6, strangers were genuinely scared of Glenn Close in public. Now here's how deeply Fatal Attraction rattled audiences. People genuinely became scared of Glenn Close in real life. Now, for a lot of viewers, Glenn Close wasn't playing a fictional character named Alex Forrest. She actually was Alex Forrest, and that scared the absolute hell out of people. The movie tapped into very raw nerves: infidelity, obsession, family destruction, the fear of one bad decision blowing up the suburban life that you spent a decade building. So when audiences ran into Close out in the wild, some of them reacted like they spotted a live grenade in shoulder pads. Close has said that strangers would just flat out avoid her. People stared with visible dread. Some crossed the street. Others would look nervous enough to suggest that she might pull a kitchen knife out of her purse and then start screaming about phone calls. Buying groceries must have been a whole experience. But even now, Alex Forrest remains one of two roles that Close gets recognized for most, alongside from Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, which is genuinely funny when you line them up. One character terrorizes families and murders puppies for fashion. The other terrorizes families and boils rabbits for revenge. How about that? Number 5. Fatal Attraction became a headline for real-life crimes. After the film exploded into a phenomenon, the media started slapping Fatal Attraction onto actual crimes like violent affairs, stalking cases, and breakups that ended in tragedy. That's how deeply it got into America's bloodstream. The title became a journalistic shortcut. Whenever there was a secret affair, an obsessive ex, threatening phone calls, reporters would reach straight for the Fatal Attraction comparison, and the timing made it stick. The film landed just before America finally started treating stalking as a serious crime. The first anti-stalking law didn't even pass until 1990, 3 years after the movie. Alex Forrest became one of the first cinematic portraits of rejection-driven obsession that audiences had really ever seen, right as the culture was about to catch up. The reach got so deep that Glenn Close herself was invited for years to speak at psychology seminars about the character. But then came the copycat media frenzy. In 1989, the 25-year-old New York teacher shot her married lover's wife 9 times in her Greenberg home. Reporters instantly labeled it the Fatal Attraction murder. Warmus was convicted of second-degree murder in 1992 after her first trial hung. Alex Forrest also became a recurring reference point in forensic psychiatry discussions of stalking, erotomania, and borderline personality disorder. A fictional character ended up cited in clinical literature for decades. That is Shakespeare villain territory. Number 4, audiences literally cheered when Alex died. Forget polite Sunday matinee energy. Fatal Attraction turned American movie theaters into something closer to a Roman Colosseum. When the final cut hit screens in September of 1987, audiences didn't just watch the climax. They participated. People stood up, people yelled at the screen, people treated Beth pulling that trigger like a championship walk-off home run. When the final shot fired and Alex hit the bathroom floor, theaters across the country erupted into actual applause. The wildest part was the energy in the room before that moment. Reports from the early screenings described crowds screaming at the screen the entire third act. "Kill the bitch!" became a recurring shout. One critic compared it to a New York holiday street party, the walls of the theater alive with noise. Screenwriter James Dearden flew in from England expecting British-style polite silence and then walked into something closer to a pro wrestling crowd. He later said that he was genuinely upset that audiences were talking over his dialogue. He'd written Alex as a tragic and lonely woman. Theaters were treating her like a final boss. Even earlier moments got the same reaction. When Beth confronts Alex over the phone and snarls, "If you come near my family again, I'll kill you." That got a ton of applause. Standing applause in some screenings, weeks into the run. Dearden has openly said that he regrets it. He never wanted Alex to land as a punching bag. But once a movie leaves the editing room, the audience, well, they decide what it is. And the audience decided that Fatal Attraction was a revenge fantasy with snacks. Number 3, the movie sparked a national shouting match that allegedly saved marriages. Fatal Attraction didn't just become a hit, it became a cultural war zone, and somehow a marriage counseling tool. The thing blew past box office smash and parked itself in the middle of one of the loudest social debates of the decade. People argued about it at dinner tables, on talk shows, in newspapers, and at deeply uncomfortable office lunches where somebody got suspiciously defensive for no apparent reason. It landed on the cover of Time magazine on November 16th of 1987. Under the headline, "The Thriller is Back." Critic Richard Corliss even called it a parable of sexual guilt. What made it explosive was that everyone read it differently. Some saw a warning about adultery. Others saw an attack on career women. Critics like Susan Faludi argued in Backlash that the film punished independent women by turning Alex into a homicidal nightmare while crowning Beth the moral hero. The takeaway, critics said, basically boiled down to leave the office, go home, bake cookies, or Glenn Close will boil your pets. Meanwhile, plenty of male viewers treated it as the most terrifying anti-cheating PSA ever made. And Glenn Close says the receipts are still rolling in. For over 35 years, men have walked up to her in public to thank her for saving their marriage. Not joking. Literal strangers confessing. After that movie, I never cheated. Imagine being so terrifying on screen that random husbands treat you like a walking marital scarecrow. Close herself has spent years defending Alex, arguing that the story unfairly punishes the mistress while letting Dan off the hook. She's not wrong. Dan does cheat, lie, and pour gasoline on every situation that he touches. Culturally, Alex became the monster. Dan somehow escaped, becoming the poster boy for men who built their own disasters. It's just classic Hollywood. Number 2, it spawned an entire genre of insert from hell movies. Now, once Hollywood saw what Fatal Attraction did at the box office, every studio in town went hunting for the next one. And the result was almost a decade of copycats. The formula was pretty simple. You take a normal suburban family, drop one unstable outsider into their lives, and then watch dishes fly. Studios cranked out The Hand That Rocks the Cradle with The Nanny from Hell, Single White Female with The Roommate from Hell, Pacific Heights with The Tenant from Hell, Misery with The Superfan from Hell, that's one of my favorites, The Crush with The Teenager from Hell, and Unlawful Entry with The Cop from Hell. Every profession got a turn. Hollywood was basically just rotating job titles through the same plot. None of them quite landed the cultural detonation that Fatal Attraction did, though, but they all did print money. By the mid-90s, the blank from hell thriller was its own genre, predictable, profitable, and trafficking entirely in the exact same anxieties that the original movie weaponized first. Adrian Lyne built a template so effective that other directors spent 10 years remixing it. The Mistress, The Nanny, The Roommate, The Superfan, The Babysitter, The Tenant, it's all the same paranoia, just different uniform. And number 1, the story came from real-life relationship horror stories. One reason the Fatal Attraction landed so hard in 1987 was that it never felt completely fake. Screenwriter James Dearden pulled chunks of the story straight from his real experience. He always insisted that the film is not autobiographical. He wasn't secretly living Michael Douglas's nightmare in some Manhattan apartment, hiding from Glenn Close behind a sofa. But he did absolutely borrow from situations that rattled him. He once dealt with someone who kept calling him obsessively after a relationship ended. And if this movie and this countdown taught us anything, repeated phone calls in the 80s would carry the emotional weight of a hostage negotiation. But there was more. A girlfriend who once cut her wrists very theatrically as a dramatic gesture, not a real attempt. A close friend tangled up with a beautiful but deeply unstable woman whose behavior was slowly torching his marriage. You can watch the DNA of Alex Forrest forming in real time. But here's the strangest production wrinkle. Alex Forrest wasn't even named Alex at first. In Dearden's original drafts, the character was called Sean. The name had to be changed during production because rumors started flying around that Dearden had based the character on Blade Runner actress Sean Young after the two allegedly had an affair. Dearden denied both. No affair, no inspiration from her, but the name got swapped to Alex anyway, just to kill the gossip. Somewhere in an alternate timeline, generations of husbands are terrified of a woman named Sean. Now, the movie itself started from something small. Dearden was alone one weekend, and his own wife was out of town, hunting for the most stripped-down story that he could write. And his what if? What would happen if a man who just dropped his wife off at the train station called up a woman that he met at a party? Well, that seed grew into one of the most anxiety-inducing thrillers of a decade. Dearden has described it as a little fable about the perils of adultery, possibly the most British understatement ever applied to a movie that involves stalking, frame-ups, and Michael Douglas looking like he hadn't slept in a year. And there you have it, everyone, 15 weird facts about Fatal Attraction. Which fact surprised you the most? Well, drop it in the comments, hit subscribe, and share this with a friend who still won't watch this movie alone. Until next time, remember, always go straight home. And this is Remember When.